A badass leader to me is someone that runs an organization, drives the vision, actually succeeds on that vision, and for the most part, people want to follow them. People want to work there. They feel like they're valued. You don't have a lot of turnover at work. People literally comment, "Wow, I love the environment here that you've created." So I think it's a leader that thinks of all of those things, which is a lot of things to think about.
Welcome to the Badass Leaders Podcast. And today we are lucky enough to speak to Mark Williams, CEO of Brokers International and Integrity Managing Partner. He is a dynamic leader with over 25 years in financial services. His career spans from hands-on experience as a producing independent agent to high-level consulting as a home office executive, guiding agencies and field marketing organizations. Today, Mark is at the forefront of the insurance industry's evolution. He's passionate about mentorship and actively empowers financial professionals to navigate and thrive in this ever-changing landscape. Now, before you forget, please take a moment to click on that subscribe button. And if you leave a comment that you subscribed, I'll make sure that I personally respond to you. It really makes a difference to us. So are you ready? Let's do this. Join me, Angela Gill Nelms, on today's episode of the Badass Leaders Podcast, where I'm joined each week by industry experts for intimate and eye-opening discussions about the challenges and joys facing the leaders of today. Listen in and get ready to scale your company, grow your brand, and unlock your full badass potential. Thank you for driving into the city on a very cold Monday evening.
My pleasure. I was super excited to be a guest.
Yeah, this is awesome. Okay, so as classic standard, I want you to introduce yourself and tell us why you're with us today.
Mark Williams. I am the CEO of a company called Brokers International. We're an insurance brokerage company. And I think that if you were to ask my peer group, they would probably consider myself a badass leader.
I love that.
So,
yes. The first person who has self-declared themselves at the beginning of the podcast
I won't
that
say
way.
that I would say that, but I think others may say that. And so I was intrigued by the podcast and thought, oh, that would be fun.
I love that. You know, several of the episodes when I've commented, you should add this to your LinkedIn or whatever that you're back. And it's so funny because most of the guests are like, oh, yes, I should do that. So you're just bringing it home from the very beginning. I love it. Okay, straight in. So let's talk a little bit about, you started, tell me if I'm right on this. You started in the industry, the insurance space, this is like a family thing that you came through, right? Can you tell us what your journey looked like?
Yeah. So first of all, my father passed away in October at 83. But
I'm sorry.
His entire career, thank you, but was a long time coming, so it was good. So
right. Okay.
His entire career, insurance. So I grew up, in fact, we used to joke, my second grade, I had a presentation to give in the second grade, and it was how to fill out a life insurance application.
Oh.
So my mother owned a property and casualty agency. My sister works in the insurance business. I have been in financial services for since I was 21, so 35 years now. Was an insurance agent. Then I became a manager. Then I got married and didn't want to live on commission, so I went and worked inside a home office at an insurance company. That led to 2 or 3 promotions, another insurance company, a third insurance company, 2 moves across the country. And in 2011, I was tapped on the shoulder to run a company-owned distributor, one of their own distributorships. So that was my first venue to become a president. And for the past 12 years now, I have run Brokers International as a CEO. And so my career, although I never sat down and said I want to be a CEO, my career path just kind of weaved and bobbed. And eventually I was running a company.
So did you ever sit down and say, I want to be in insurance? Or did it just never occur to you not to be in insurance then?
Funny enough, I was bartending at the age of 25, and I was lost, and I just did not know what I wanted to do. I was in the service, so I did not go directly to have a degree, so I was going to school at night, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And my dad said, you should get into the insurance business. You're a people person. You can make your own hours. You can still go to school. And so It fit. It fit for a short period of time, and it worked. And I did well enough where I was making more than when I was bartending, and I was had better hours and all that. And so, no, I never sat down and said, "Oh, I wish I was in the insurance business." And in fact, if I were to do it all over again, I'd be a mechanic.
Oh, okay. First off, okay, before you say what I want to know, tell me more on that. But I also was just thinking, I've talked about this on some of my times I've been interviewed. I'm an engineer, but when I was in high school and the Air Force suggested I should be an engineer, I was like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Engineers are nerds. They wear pocket protectors. They have tape on their glasses. Like, I do not fall into that
Typical
category,
stereotype.
right? So before we hear about the mechanic, because I want to hear about that, was there ever a moment growing up, between second grade where you wrote that initial application until bartending school, where you're like, I absolutely am not going to be in insurance?
No, not really. I was really fortunate. My dad did well. We were middle class family. Like, I never wanted for anything. We took vacations every year. It provided for our family, and he used to say that a lot. Like, we're a family that every Friday, what are you thankful for? What are you looking forward to? He used to say that at dinner.
Oh, I love that.
And so insurance, like the financial services business, was very good to my family. So I never had this negative connotation about it at all. Mm-hmm. My dad was a sales guy, and it was no. So the answer is no. It never struck me as, I'm not going to do that. I don't know that I could work with my dad. Like, we were a little oil and water that way. But I definitely had his support and a lot of his education and knowledge and mentorship.
Right.
And so it just worked out. So yeah, no.
Okay, now tell me about the mechanic.
So when I'm stressed, I work with things with my hands. I'm a cleaner. Like, when I'm really stressed, I clean. And I think I clean.
I do the same thing, by the way.
I think it's because it's an immediate gratification, right? You control something. You walk into a room, it's dirty. You control it, and the outcome is it's clean, and you feel satisfied. So I work with my hands. I'm a car geek. Love cars, have several of them, love to work on them. And I think that if I had been exposed to that earlier, I love working with my hands. My wife used to say you should have been a farmer, because I like hard work, and I like to see the fruits of my labor. And mechanic was always fun. I bought a car that couldn't drive, got it to drive. Like, there's something, a huge accomplishment to that. So I'm toying with the idea of possibly opening like a little tiny garage.
I love this idea.
So yeah, I think if I could do it all over again and money wasn't an issue, which it always is an issue, I would have probably tried to be a mechanic.
Oh, that is really cool. I'm glad we slipped that in there.
Yes.
Okay. So you took a very non-traditional path to CEO in that you started as an agent, right?
Yep.
And then moved your way throughout it. So you basically, the individuals who are like, I have filled every single role, and now I truly understand what you were going through. You kind of fulfill that. So let's harken back to that first statement you said, because you said your team members or your colleagues would call you a badass leader. So we're just going to dig right into that.
Yeah.
So what is your definition of a badass leader? Or what do you think their definition is?
I think there's leaders and there's managers. Mm-hmm. And I wrote about a book about this, so we'll chat about that in a second. Yep. I think as someone who runs an organization, your job is to set the vision of where you want the ultimate, the company to look like 3 years from now, or 5 years from now, or 8 from now. Right? You're steering the ship the long term. Mm-hmm. And you have to convince everyone else that direction is right. Like, that this is, number one, somewhere I want to work, we care about our employees. We do have a vision, and you put your words into action. And I think a badass leader to me is someone that runs an organization, drives the vision, actually succeeds on that vision. And for the most part, people want to follow them. People want to work there. They feel like they're valued. You don't have a lot of turnover at work. People literally comment, wow, I love the environment here that you've created. So I think it's a leader that thinks of all of those things, which is a lot of things to think about. And someone that isn't just out to make money or just out for the bottom line, and I think people feel that. And I know it's a buzzword today, but authentic, transparent. I think that's how I run the company, and I think people would second that.
Yeah.
So all those things together, I guess. Yes.
I'm grateful for that definition from you, because I'm always curious what individuals think. And I agree. I'm actually really grateful that the podcast so far has been such a hit, and we are booked for a couple of months
Awesome.
up, which I did not expect. I'm also a little tired and exhausted. So there you go.
I'm sure it goes hand in hand.
And one of the things is that the nice part of it is it's easy to say no to individuals. And I have people reaching out, and they're often reaching out to a Badass Leaders podcast, and they're reaching out with just their numbers, and they're just saying, I've sold this, da, da, da. And my response back is, that's really great, but this is the Badass Leaders podcast. Tell me about your leadership style.
Yep.
Tell me about, how you've built cultures, or how you handle conflict, or how you do some of those things. So we're going to talk about a couple of those things.
Yeah.
Dig in.
And I'll give you one great example. So the company that I'm running now was founded by people that lived out in a community of 700 people.
Okay.
So the office was 45 miles west of Des Moines in a very small town, and one stoplight in the entire town. 95 employees. The majority of them were from farm communities. Old building. Long story short, about 7 years ago, we moved the company 40 miles. So for people who had no commute or very small commute, now had over 45 minutes to an hour commute. That was the first thing.
I would say a lot of 4-letter words about you that would not be nice words if you were my boss and did that.
Yep. And this was a company that for 32 years was out there in the small community. So we moved the company. And it was the little things we thought at first. The office has to be really fantastic for the employee because we're asking them to drive a long way. So we installed sit-stand desks for everyone, electronic desks. Everyone had 2 monitors. They got to choose the chair of choice as an example. Break room with TVs and games and things that they weren't used to, so that the environment was an environment that was welcoming for them. They came a long way. We worked with the City of Des Moines Bus Rapid Transit, where a lot of the people could carpool in a van that they got from the city, and we worked with that and subsidized that. So we attempted to think about all of the reasons to keep someone instead of having to turn over staff, and we really wanted those employees. And I will say that out of 96 employees, we only lost 2.
Wow.
In that whole transition time period, so I'm super proud of that. But I think it's the idea of thinking about your employees and what this is actually doing to their lives, and trying to address it in the best possible manner where everyone wins. That, I think, is a badass attribute. When you really do think about what's the best thing for the employee. I've worked for corporations where you walk in and everything's this mauve, weird color, and everything just looks the same. There's nothing. They say that employees mean something, but they really don't.
It's a value they wrote on their wall, and that's where it stops.
And that's where it stops.
Exactly.
Right. And so I think, I'll start there. Just knowing, spending time with your employees, knowing your employees, that's a whole nother topic we could talk about, but understanding what your employees go through on a day-to-day basis and turning that into either actionable items or PTO or we do dog days, for example. We bring a dog into the office once a week, 1 dog a week, and it's from the employees, and there's rules around it, but that's like one thing that the employees wanted, we did. So we have an employee council. We listen to our employees. So that's the first badass thing is I pay attention to who works for us. How long have they been here? What do they want? What do they expect? And we listen, and we do as much as we can to accommodate a lot of what they ask.
So I want to pinpoint something you said on that, because oftentimes we get a lot of, especially young leaders and first-time CEOs, and they think, okay, I'm going to go after what Silicon Valley's done, and I'm going to put in a whole bunch of ping pong tables, and I'm going to do all these things. But what I want to pinpoint is the reason you selected these things, okay? Because there's a difference between creating a flashy office with a whole bunch of amenities because you want to be cool and flashy and be like this other company. There's a difference between that and what you said was listening to the employees, thinking about what they go through. One of the values that we have at the AGN Group is seeing humans as humans. Yep. And that means thinking through they're going to have to make these sacrifices in their family. Maybe they need flexible hours when they come in or whatever that looks like. Yep. But not doing it because it's the cool thing to do. Doing it because it is what your team members need in order to have a successful day and to be successful at your organization.
You bet. I'll label that as appreciation. It takes effort to appreciate people and to let them know they're appreciated. Goofy things. And I can give you 20 different things that we do. In the summertime, in the middle of the summer, we run someone over to Costco and we buy a whole bunch of ice cream bars and we walk around on a cart and just hand out ice cream. Like no reason whatsoever. It's a Tuesday at 2. You might show up on a Friday morning and we pass out raffle tickets and we raffle off prizes, goofy things, a Starbucks card or a gas card or something. Our employees said to us just before the move, we're going to have to be waiting for rapid transit. Sometimes we have to carpool now with people. So can we have some things that we can do besides sitting at our desk? Right. And that was kind of the games, right? So we brought in a few games. We brought in some TVs. Yep, sit in the break room, watch some TV while you're waiting. It wasn't a hey, let's be cool. It was, hey, our employees are asking for something. This makes sense as long as it's not abused. Great. And so we did that, and we got a lot of great feedback from that. So that little bit of appreciation, I think, goes a long way. We do, again, I get little tips and advice. I do an open mic. So once every month, we schedule 30 minutes of time where the employees can come on with me on a Zoom call, and it's 30 minutes of anything talk. They can ask me questions about the company. Usually we don't. We talk about who's watching what on TV, like who's reading something. We're celebrating something that somebody did. We're invested in just being people and knowing about our people. And I think that probably sums up that whole badass appreciation. We're giving you 30 minutes of time just to chat.
Yeah. No, I love that because also I've worked at companies where the leaders say, "Oh, I have an open door policy," and they don't.
Right.
And it's once again, okay, let's actually put action steps and make it super easy by scheduling it and you're automatically on it. Then absolutely, that is amazing. It reminds me when we were building Florence Healthcare, as we started really scaling during COVID,
Yep.
When we had new employees, we couldn't take new employees out to lunch and really get to know them. So we started doing new employee Zoom lunches.
Yep.
And I was really forcing all the executives, you need to be on there. And what we would do is then we would also tell little funny stories of like the stupid stuff we did in the early days so that some of the new people saw us as humans.
You bet.
And they were also in on the inside jokes, which they loved, right?
Yeah.
It was just a cool bonding. And it was the best we could do during COVID. But it also is this reminder of, as a leader, to stop thinking about the things holding you back. Instead, think about, okay, here's where we're at. We need to move for whatever reason you guys needed to move. Okay, how can we set the company, the team, the individual up for success?
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the lunches thing. So we actually have it built into our budget every year. I don't want to say we require, but we heavily emphasize managers and leadership positions taking people to lunch on a regular basis. And they have to include people from other departments. Now, we're not a massive company, right? 150.
Now, is this a one-on-one lunch or multiple people lunch?
They can do it on the, it's up to the manager, right?
Okay.
So let's say there's a new employee and you just want to take that new employee. You can take 2 or 3. So it's up to them.
Okay.
I usually take new employees. I always take out to lunch. It's called the new employee lunch. And we'll get, usually we do it in 3-month batches because we don't get a lot of new employees. But for them, as long as they're once every few weeks taking members of the company to lunch. And it's not a business lunch, although it can be. It's, again, kind of an open format. I want people to know the employees.
I love this.
If I were to walk through the office, I know most of my employees' names. I know their pets' names. I know what they do on the weekends. I know their hobbies. And I think stressing that to new leaders, understanding your people are people, and most people work to live. They don't live to work. I'm convinced that most people want a really nice environment. They want to work hard, and they want to go home and live their life.
Exactly.
Most people aren't working to live. They're working to live. They're not living to work.
Right.
And those people want to feel valued and appreciated. And again, I think it goes back to that. And if you wake up every day thinking to yourself, do one thing that your employees will know that you appreciate them.
Yeah.
Even if it's honesty in our financials. We have a quarterly meeting, a town hall every quarter, and we walk through literally, are we making money or are we not? Which department is, which one isn't? Where are we falling behind? Where are we ahead? The initiatives that we work on, we give grades as to how well we're doing on them. So I think we're as transparent as a company can be. to our employees because every one of those people that works for the company contributes to that.
Right.
And I want them to feel that way.
Well, and especially in this day and age where we have these conversations that Simon Sinek talks a lot about this on his podcast. It is not a meritocracy. I actually was just recently working with an organization where the leader would use that term a lot.
Yeah.
And then when they did mass layoffs because they didn't raise funds, it's like, that's not the definition of a meritocracy. That's a definition of balancing the budget by removing payroll so that you can continue. That's a very different thing, right? So
Agreed.
don't say these two things together. And I think having the transparency, for example, in finances in these areas, you can also say, okay, well, this area, we're not making as much money. How can we collaborate? Anyone have creative ideas, how we can collaborate and bring in maybe some other ideas from other areas, and because we're going to go up together or we're going to struggle together.
I love that idea. In fact, years ago, we had a program. I don't know if it's still around, actually, so it's reminding me to think about it. If an employee thought of an idea that saved the company money, we would give a percentage of the savings back to them. So any idea. So if it was saving less on buying paper, or like literally any savings, you got a percentage. Our travelers, we have quite a few people that travel quite a bit.
Right.
And let's say that they're going to Arizona from Des Moines and they say, hey, I'd like to stay the weekend. My flight's this much cheaper.
Right.
Can I get a hotel room on the savings? Like that kind of thing, 100%. Right.
Absolutely.
So I want you to think about what you're spending because it is our money, not your money. Mm-hmm. So any idea that either creates more efficiency in the company, creates a savings loss, or even an investment that will save me in the long term, 100% that should be applauded. It should be rewarded. We reward and recognize on a regular basis. That's a whole nother conversation we can have. But to your point, when everyone is rowing in that direction, everyone thinks that way. Wow, this is, this would be better for the company if we did X, and that idea bubbles up. You can't ask for anything more. Like that's the perfect scenario in a company.
How amazing is that? And not only is that amazing for your company, but how amazing is that for that individual in developing their leadership skills to look for those things and document those things. Like I'm a big believer in keep your LinkedIn update. The things you're proud of, go ahead and put it up there. You save the company $10,000 by doing X, Y, and Z.
Brag about it.
Brag about it. Exactly. Put it up there. Because also I think that what it's helping by focusing on that, it's helping that future leader learn the value of it. They may be a future entrepreneur themselves. Somebody else on their team might be. And you're actually just kind of giving them business school lessons that they're learning in real life.
You bet. I think everyone sees everything. Everyone sees their perspective first in every situation, right? So no matter what, in any situation, you're always going to think of, oh, how did this affect me first? And then maybe it's onto someone else. I think as new leadership, you're so caught up in doing the things you're supposed to do, right? I have to forecast. I have to do my budget. There's things that you have to do. And then you start to learn there's things that you do sometimes that you don't have to do, but they'll make life easier for you. Or you will make the meeting 10 minutes longer and give an explanation that's a little bit longer to give context to people that need the context. That's probably one of the best examples is there are lots of things that I take for granted that I know. I know more about the company than probably anyone else. And sometimes I have to provide the feedback or the extra context so that someone else understands the way I'm thinking and why I'm thinking that. When you're young in management, sometimes you do the knee-jerk easiest thing to do, or I've got to accomplish this first. And you learn over time that sometimes the shortcuts aren't really shortcuts.
Right. Sometimes pausing to sit back and evaluate the landscape and then make a decision, or even make a decision that my big thing is to make a decision and say, we're going to experiment with this path because we strongly believe this is going to be the case, and we're going to put a 45-day limit on it. We're going to experiment, and then we're going to step back and see if that's really going to be successful for us.
Super thrilled you mentioned that. One of the we talk about this a lot. We did a 2-year project, and it was all me. We wanted to invest in future technology. We spent $2 million and 19 months building an infrastructure of technology. It didn't work. It literally didn't work. And of course, I went in front of the company and said, let me share with you our 18-month experiment. and why it didn't work and why we're closing it down and who takes full responsibility for spending $2 million in 18 months of their time, the company's money. Because now we learned a lot. So don't get like every mistake you can learn something from. But it was really important for me that the company knew that I made the mistake.
Yes.
That I went out on a limb. This was my idea. I pushed it. They worked on it for a long time and it went nowhere. And this is why it went nowhere. And it's my responsibility. I got more positive feedback from that.
Yep.
Me sharing that, I made a mistake and it was a big one and it cost us. Just being open and honest about that. Yeah. And I'll save it for later, but that has to do with the quote that,
oh yeah,
a quote
the
that I have.
end quote. Yes.
Yes, I have a quote.
So really for listeners, if you're not counting, the second way we're going to go ahead and list out that Mark Williams is a badass leader is that he takes the challenge, the mistakes, the challenges, and he owns up to it. And he's vulnerable in front of his team, which also allows all of those team members to say, wait, I can take a risk at something and do my absolute best. And if it fails, I can then come and own up to it because my great leader has done that and reflected, which science shows that they are more willing to take the right risk and put their all in when they know there's that safety zone there.
Failing forward. And it's amazing. And you're probably a little closer to science than I am even. It's funny because scientists, that's all they do is fail. You have to fail to succeed, right?
Exactly.
It's the light bulb 1,000 times and the 1,000th time it lights.
Right.
And yet in business, we don't look at it the same way. Oh, you failed. Well, it wasn't really a failure. Oh, I opened a business and it didn't do well and I had to close the business. Well, it really isn't a failure because you learned a lot and you don't know what you've learned is going to help you somewhere else down the road. So I think we view things in a really, sometimes a horrible light of saying that is a failure. It isn't a failure. You failed forward. Yeah, you gave it your best shot. What'd you learn from it? Most importantly, what'd you learn from it?
Yeah, we like to say instead of failing fast, really growing fast.
Yeah.
Because that's the way that you grow fast. And in my day job where I run Biolocity, we were just recently talking about this and working with other entrepreneurs. We want the ones that are coming in and giving advice to the new entrepreneurs. We want ones who've also experienced failure.
Yep.
Because just because someone has been lucky at their first company that they've built does not mean they're going to be lucky at the future ones, right? And I know, and I think you will agree with this, that we learn so much more from our failures. So those opportunities are our growth fast opportunities. Those are the things that I was just on a call with a team today and we're going over stuff and they're using some words and I'm like, whoa, wait. We're not going to say it that way because if you say that way in front of us, it's fine. If you say it in front of a VC, they're going to be like, you're gone, right? Yep. And of course their response is, but you're not VC, you're not, and I'm like, I know, but I want you to change the way you think in your brain and you say things to your team. Yep. Because if you're working in front of, so for listeners, if you're not in the entrepreneur space, VC is venture capitalists, if you're looking to get funding from someone, you don't know if later in the funding cycle and during due diligence, if you say things that have this little twist that are not, I'm not saying you should lie, but you absolutely don't want to use these phrases because then someone who doesn't know your industry really well, when they hear this word, it's a no immediately.
Yeah, it's going to be it's a check mark.
Right. Sure. So it's some of those things to get to understand, the things that we're saying, the way that we're putting things out to our teams, that we're encouraging them, that we're taking ownership, that we're thinking them. So you showed how you see people as humans and show appreciation. You showed that you can be vulnerable and own your mistakes. Let's dig into some others. I want to hear how you do conflict. I've been on this big conflict resolution thing lately.
So first, my management style, I think I'm relatively, I'm a collaborator at heart. I want to sell my vision, and the first thing I want is for people to push back. I don't need yes people. I need people that say, all right, I hear that. Are you worried about this, or could this potentially happen? I need the naysayers, and I need the devil's advocate for sure. I'm an incredibly opinionated person, and I need you to push back so I can convince myself and possibly change my mind. So I'm a collaborative person. There's a phrase that I use at work all the time. You'll never hurt my feelings as long as it's not personal at work. right? Just don't get personal. If you disagree, I need you to stand your ground, but I need you to explain to me why you disagree.
Love it.
I don't believe that's a conflict. I believe that's healthy.
Yep.
That's a resolution or coming to terms with something. Or the advantage of being a CEO is there are times you get to make the decision. Yep, I heard all of this. With this information, I'm still convinced that we're going left, not right.
Yep.
Conflict is interesting because depending on who you're having conflict with and what that conflict is, I think there's lots of different definitions or different ways to handle it. If you're having a conflict with your upline, meaning your manager, and now you have to manage up, depending on their personality, you may have to be really careful.
Oh, yes.
Right? Oftentimes it's put your pride in your pocket and just walk away. You're not the boss. And although you may be right or think you're right, it's not an opportunity to butt heads. It might not be. With your subordinates, it's very similar as well. You don't want to be the hard ass, excuse my French, right? But you have a conflict with someone. The best way, in my mind, much like sales, is to try to get into the mindset of the other person.
Yes.
Explain to me the conflict, right? So early on in my career, we had two employees that were sitting next to each other. Their workstations were next to each other, and one person wore lots and lots of cologne or perfume. And it really bothered the other person. That's a conflict, an interesting one. Now, most people would say that's HR, and I don't want to make a huge deal of it, but we have to come to a conflict. We have to come to a resolution.
Right.
One employee's really disturbed, and the other one doesn't even know it.
Right.
So that's one of those conflicts where, hey, let's understand from both sides. Turns out we just explained that this person is really sensitive to smell. Any smell, even that's a tuna fish sandwich, the cologne that you're wearing, tissues that are scented. Can we ask as a favor either that, or can we possibly move the person? Right? Yeah. There's a resolution here. It's not necessarily that big of a conflict. Let's not make it a huge conflict. But I think if you start with, I wonder why you think what you think. I'm curious as to what you're thinking or how you're thinking. And maybe we don't have a conflict at all, or maybe we can just agree to disagree and move on from there. And I think that's a really tough lesson, especially I would argue in today's times with everything being so divisive. I can respect your opinion and still disagree with it. I can even think for you it's right, and for me it's not right. I can respect that, and I think in the world today, everything is a conflict, and I don't think it has to be.
I think that one of the missions that I have, and this may be my first book that I write, I don't know, because I'm doing lots of research into it. But one of my missions is for us to basically kind of redefine what the word conflict is, because it has this negative connotation in general to it. And if individuals learn how to have healthy conversations that grow towards collaboration and cohesion, then that's the conflict that I want to. So it's kind of like when we think of like badass, it still pops up on things as if it's a cuss word. And to me, it's being the absolute best you can at something at that particular day, or as a team, individual, as a company. That's what that means. And so I think for conflict, it is, there are some bits of information, there are some personalities, there are some things that aren't immediately cohesive. And it's sitting there and having those transparent conversations and listening to each other and saying, okay, Mark, so what I heard you say was this. Did I understand what you really meant by that? And allowing you to say, no, and that's not what I meant. What I meant was this. What I've seen over the years is that if teams and individuals, and especially in the executive suite, can learn how to do that and can model that, then the end result is amazing. And I would rather have that than the individuals who think, well, I disagree with this, or I cannot stand the smell of this perfume or cologne, or this, that, and the other, but I'm not going to say anything about it because I may upset someone and I'd tread on waters, right? Modeling what healthy communication and conflict looks like.
Yeah, that resentment will bubble up for sure, right? Whenever you suppress anything. To be really direct, when I go into a conflict resolution situation, everyone needs to realize that you're not always going to get your own way. That's number one. You may disagree, and it's okay to disagree. Again, that's where sometimes being the boss is a value, right? I get to say, this is what we are going to do, and this is the rationale behind it, and whether we like it or not, this is what we're doing. But as long as you go in really explaining where you got to your point, and I think I'm pretty good about, this is what I'm thinking, this is why I'm thinking it, I'm curious about your opinion, let's talk it out. At the end of the day, we may just do it as a test. I may decide, let's wait. But I think almost every conflict, as long as you're willing sometimes to say, yep, I was wrong, or hey, I don't see it that way, but I'm willing to acquiesce today.
Well, I'm thinking too,
difficult.
or an opportunity to say, once again, show appreciation. You know what? I bet that was hard for you to bring to me. Thank you so much for speaking up. Yep. And I said that today in a call that we're on, and someone blurted out some frustration. And towards the end of the call, I said, thank you so much, because I can't stand when people are thinking things in their head that they're super frustrated. And I said, I'm so grateful to you that you said this so we could walk through this. And the change in the look on his face, and just like, I felt as if I could see his whole body.
Yeah, he took the vest off.
Right?
The leather vest.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so once again, it's seeing that individual as a human, and it's showing that appreciation for them, allowing you to have a moment to become better together.
And as you were talking, I was thinking of criticism, which has a very interesting connotation, much like the word conflict. When you're providing criticism, it's actually usually a positive. It can come across as a negative. And I'll give you an example. It happened to me years ago. I went to hear someone speak about their company. They were presenting things about their company. And he was a horrible speaker. Horrible. I was sitting next to the CEO of that company, listening to his employee explain, and he, at lunch, came over to me and said, so what did you think? And I said, well, if you're asking me, I'm going to tell you, but buckle in.
Right.
And as long as I can be candid. And
right.
He said, that's why I'm asking. And I said, your company sounds fantastic. I wouldn't buy anything from that dude, because half the people weren't paying attention.
Right.
He's not selling anything. He's sharing information, and it's really boring, and it's really dull. And you have a pretty cool company.
Right.
You need to work on that. Someone's got to give him criticism, or you got to find someone else. That was me giving direct feedback. Criticism, I think he appreciated the directness. He appreciated I was very candid. Now, whether he does anything with it or not, whether he was offended or not, he didn't seem to. But he asked, and I made sure that I gave it. I actually love that when someone comes up to me and says, I heard you speak. I really wish you hadn't have said this, or I wish you had done it that way. 100%, I really appreciate that. I'd much rather know that. Maybe I said something incorrectly. Maybe I positioned something wrong. Maybe I used a word that I shouldn't use. I'm 56 years old, right? And the kids say something else. I said something to offend someone. So it really is positive, and criticism is much like conflict. Most people want it. It's very difficult to take. And yet it's framing that as being, hey, I'm trying to help you out. Like, the criticism is a good thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. So very similar to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think both of them, the other similarity is that there is an art to delivering and receiving in both situations.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things, as we have a lot of young entrepreneurs who are listening to this podcast. And when you're thinking about how to handle these things, so much is in the delivery.
Yep.
And also what is your motive for both of these as well, right? Is your motive that you really want to see the company succeed, which sounds like that was the case in your example? Or is your motive just to be a jerk and say something? I know people who they're just going to say something negative just because it's Monday. Yep. And Monday is extra double negative day or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's funny because I'm going back to like just the badass concept. I think a lot of people get into leadership and they think I need to lead with a strong hand, right? Like it's this is what I think. This is my way. Do you know who I am? That kind of thing. Right.
Did you see my title on my business card?
I think you alienate way more than you get. And I think true leadership, people that really, when they're gone, or the company, and you think back to people that just made a difference, or they led with their heart first, or there's leaders like that people just aspire to be or want to be around or be with. And I think it's the brand. I talk a lot about people's brand. know your brand, know who you are, and if you don't like what you are, change it. But it's so important to know who you are and what you stand for, and make sure that everyone sees exactly what you see.
Absolutely. So we do coaching on personal brand.
Yeah.
I'm actually working with, I've already said it in an earlier podcast, so I'll go ahead and say it. My cousin right now is having us work on his brand with him. And that's a fun part of as part of building a brand. You often need to, in the early stages, look at a lot of words and say, which of these words resonate with me? And one of the things that I was saying as he was looking at them, I said, okay, look at the words that resonate with you now. Okay. And also we're going to pay attention to the words that you want to resonate with you.
Yep.
And then let's pause and sit back and say, okay, a personal brand needs to be authentic. It needs to be who you are. It needs to be consistent throughout. Yep. So we're not making you into Superman all of a sudden. We're just going to highlight who you are and ensure that you're being consistent in all areas. Yep. And give you the opportunity to say, wow, I really want this to be a part of my brand, and I'm really not honing those skills. What do I need to do to learn how to improve my communication, improve my storytelling, improve some of these things that may align with who I am as a brand?
Yeah, I love that. I think that if everyone thought about what people thought of them, people would oftentimes act much differently.
Tell me more.
So that's one of the first things I tell people about, what is your brand? The easiest way to find out your brand is find someone that'll truly tell you the truth and just ask them, what do people say about me behind my back? That's your brand. I joke about it a lot in my presentations, but everyone knows that at Halloween, everyone knows the house that gives out good candy.
Right.
Like that's their brand, right? If you were to ask, that's the brand. Well, if you're the person that people are afraid of, if you're the person that no one asks questions to, maybe you're the go-to person. Maybe you're the subject matter expert in your department and everyone flocks to you. That's awesome if you're that person. How do you work? How do you make that even broader? Maybe you are the person that everyone sees as a leader and you're not a leader yet. Maybe you're the person that is kind of a jerk and you don't want to be. Maybe you're just shy and introverted, and so you don't open up a lot, and so you're just the person that people just don't talk to. How do you change that? How do you understand who you are, and how do you make those little changes? And if you're happy with who you are, just let people know that, right? That'll be part of your brand.
Right.
And I think it's important for a leader, especially as you go into leadership. What is your brand? What do you stand for? And today, that's what do you do on LinkedIn? It's the places you go. It's the people you see. It's today our worlds are so under the microscope that you really have to be careful about who you are and be honest with who you are. And as long as you are that person and you're fine with being that person, whatever that is, that's fantastic. But I think it's important for a leader to understand who he is or who she is, what that brand is, and what does your persona or personality, because oftentimes as leaders, our organization takes on that flavor.
I love that. And to be clear, not in a way that you're paranoid constantly about what people are thinking about you. So if you heard that and your red flag went up on that, that's not what we're saying at all. It's being cognizant and aware of what you're putting out into the world.
Yep.
And making a decision, is this what I want to be putting out into the world?
Correct.
And if the answer is no, then what do I need to do to put within myself first? Because you should always start with yourself.
Yep.
What growth areas do I need within myself? And skills do I need to acquire? Do I need to work with a therapist? Which I would say everyone, yes. Do I need to work with an executive coach? I also would say to everyone, yes.
Agreed.
So what are those things that I need to do to continue to grow? I think the best leaders that I know are leaders who are constantly learning and constantly growing. And no one's like, I am now an absolute expert in leadership.
Yeah, 100%. Listen, if you're an athlete, you realize that you're always learning, right? There's always someone that can either shoot the ball better, lift more, run faster. What else can I do to make myself a little bit better? People are the same way. My mother's a huge reader. My wife's a huge reader, and she'll soak up anything she can. She loves to learn, which I'm super envious of. Anything. Right now we're building a sink out of an old dresser. Right? And we've never done it before.
So you're going to put the basin inside. You're going to cut out.
Cut all that. And I've never done that before. And so we're both learning, and you can just see it like she has a thirst for knowledge. I love that. And I think people see that. When you invest in yourself, people see that you're investing in yourself. Go to a workshop. Go listen to someone else speak. Go understand. Go sit in on one of your. I'm not an IT person at all. Oftentimes, I will sit in on what my IT team is doing simply because I want the education. I need to understand it. I need to understand what they're working on, number one, just as the CEO, but also I want to understand their world. I want to understand what they're working on, what are the pluses and the minuses of it, and the only way to do that is to invest some time there. Constantly expanding your head is kind of the way I think about it. Just constantly amassing more information can only be a good thing.
Well, one of the things I just realized recently, because I love to listen to different podcasts, especially in the morning when I'm getting ready. And part of that's selfish, right? Like I am watching their podcasts, the ones that I like, and I'm taking away certain things. Like, I really like when Simon does this, or Mel does this, or, just...
Mel Robbins, another good one.
Yes, exactly. Just insert the podcast host. I really love when they do this, okay? But the other thing that just really occurred to me the other day was there are a couple, and these were actually a few Mel Robbins episodes, where I think one of them dealt with negative self-talk or something like that, right? And I almost scrolled past it because I thought I really don't have negative self-talk. And I thought, I don't need to waste my time on that. And then I scrolled back to it because as a leader and wanting to work and help everyone on my team, I thought, wait, if I listen to this and I first off understand what those individuals who struggle with this are going through, and I also hear what these experts say as advice on how to improve this, then I am improving my ability to kind of sit in there with people that I've never really thought and spent time to do.
I love that. I'm thinking of my own personal vulnerability. I'll share a somewhat personal story. Up until probably the last number of years, had I met you and I could have a conversation for 30 minutes. You would know very little about me, but I would know a lot about you. I can control a conversation very easily. I ask a lot of questions, and I wasn't very open. I didn't.
You
share
said
a lot.
you're a car salesman? I'm kidding.
Didn't share a lot of personal stuff. And working with a therapist for a number of years, I realized that in order for me to build relationships that really matter, including with my employees and the people that I surround myself at work, you have to share something personal.
Yep.
You have to be a little vulnerable. And I will share with you that the last 2 or 3 years of my life have been so much more meaningful and fulfilling for me as an individual. Just sharing a little bit more, being a little more vulnerable about myself. Ooh, this hurts a little bit, or I got my feelings hurt, or I really wish I had done that, or hey, I just really enjoy your company. I'd love to go have a beer with you. Those small things that I would have never done 3 years ago has changed, I think, number one, just the way I feel. But I think even as a leader, I think I've become a better leader because of that. So just that little bit of kind of learning something new, being vulnerable, understanding what that can do and what that can provide has literally changed my outlook on I don't want to say the world, that's a pretty bold statement, but it has changed my life to some degree, which is fantastic. And I think, again, a better leader for it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of individuals who are aspiring to be great leaders need to hear that. And there also is a difference of oversharing. And, I've done that before, and usually that happens when I'm super stressed and exhausted and something insane has happened and it's just like out there, right? So none of us are perfect. I'll go ahead and mark myself as not being perfect today. But I think that, I think that being and showing your imperfection and showing those little snippets of personality, that people, once again, see you as a human being.
Yeah.
And the world is a better place when humans see humans as humans.
100%. And especially in leadership, I think you find in leadership, oftentimes the roles are intimidating, just the title. So there are people that are, I think you learn when you're in leadership long enough, some people, it doesn't bother them at all. Like they don't see the title, they treat you as a human being, they know you put your pants on one leg at a time. Mm-hmm. And then there's others that because you have the title get very, very either nervous or self-conscious. We had a holiday party and we had a brand new employee that walked up to me and go, "Oh, you're the boss." And you could tell their nervousness a little bit. And I literally looked over and I said, "It's okay. Like, I'm just like you. Like, yeah, I get nervous too sometimes talking to new people. So it's okay." Like, it's funny. And I think you learn to navigate that a little bit just over time. But it is something that when it first happened, it took me by surprise. Like, I really wasn't sure, so realizing what someone else is going through, again, part of that vulnerability and just being connected to somebody and having some empathy with people, I think goes a long way.
Well, I also want to tie back to the whole title thing. And, one of the things I think great badass leaders do is they also have the ability to make every single individual feel like a human.
Like you're talking to them.
Yeah. I like the leaders who know the genders' names. Yep. And I just started my new job, and I know Muhammad is the individual who cleans my office over at Emory. And I know he's also really upset that it's a new building and people keep scrunching cereal into the carpet. So if there's anyone from Emory in the Health Science Research Building and you're doing that on the first floor, Muhammad, please request you stop doing that.
Yes, please.
But I think that is it. I recently went to an event, and someone who's a leader of an organization, I was introduced to this person, and they didn't make any eye contact with me. They were busy saying hi to everyone else, but as they were saying hi to me. And I sat there and I thought, this is really sad. But the beauty of it was I experienced that. It reminded me what it feels like.
You bet.
To not feel important to someone who's standing in front of you or around you.
I'm glad you mentioned that. And the phone is a huge bad habit for lots of people. I have to constantly remind myself, if I'm at a lunch or I'm at a dinner or I've just sat down with you and asked you for 10 minutes of your time, the phone has to remain in my pocket. Or I can't tell you how many times I'm talking to someone and literally in the middle of us talking, two people literally face-to-face talking to each other, someone pulls out their phone and reads their phone. And it's not anything contributing to the conversation. It's just that they have to check something. The feeling that it gives you being on the opposite end of that. And I understand that lots of people in positions have hundreds of emails and lots of texts and lots of phone calls. But if you're sitting down with someone, give them your attention. And it's a struggle for me, admittedly, because I'm much like everyone else addicted to that. I'm really good about replying quickly, but I am consciously making an effort, and people do pay attention to that today. And so to your point about, I'm really careful about even walking into the building, and there's 3 employees that I'll walk by. If I say hello to one, I need to say hello to the other 2, because someone might say, "Ooh, he likes them, but not me," right? So you have to be conscious of those things. How am I making people feel? And sometimes that can be tiring, but I think to your point, it does matter how you make people feel, and you do have to be conscious of it. And it's just one of those things that you have to pay attention to, I think.
And I will give a little secret to anyone who doesn't know this. Like, when you smile and authentically greet someone and say hi, it makes your day better too.
You bet.
Like, you've made their day, and it makes your day better. I know there was one company that I think I read this in a book, and they were just talking about that, like, part of their rules were if you got within this many feet of someone, you had to say something to them. Like, it was just like,
that's super cool.
Yeah, we're teaching you that if you get this close, you have to. Yep. And it translates into excellent customer success and customer branding on that way as well. Because when you get used to doing these things in one environment and you see the benefit of them, then you start spreading them into all environments. Then we talk about how amazing that is.
We had a campaign years ago where our customer service people that were on the phones had to ask one goofy question while they were on a call with a customer.
Oh my gosh.
Right? So, what are you having for dinner tonight? Or what's your favorite candy bar? Or it had to be something just totally that would stop the conversation. And we had so much, like, again, one of those things that we started to do and we don't do it anymore, but you get a lot of mileage from that, right? Just having a conversation with someone, asking something goofy, or much to your point, it does matter.
Because here's a tip or trick you can do. When I was building Florence, we were working with a hospital up in Seattle, and something came up about favorite candy bars. I know in the intro, we had everyone go around and say their name, like mine, Angela Gill Nelms, and my favorite candy bar is a Snickers. Okay. Yeah. And so I had taken notes on that. And then when this particular person did like enrolled really fast or did something amazing, and I sent like a really big Snickers bar to them.
Golden.
Right?
Personalized anything, golden.
Right?
Nicely
It was just
done.
like, trust me, anytime I needed anything from them, I was the first one. Not because I didn't use that as a trick, but I was just like, hey, I see you.
And you
I'm
paid attention.
appreciative of you. And it pays off. Okay, so I want to talk about the book that I'm not sure how I didn't know that you wrote a book. So we somehow missed out on that because usually if I interview someone who's an author, I read their book first. So that's a miss.
Not a huge promoter of it, but lead, don't manage. And it's the 12 steps for management. And I'll share why I got into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
After years and years and years of being in leadership, there's one demographic division of leadership that's overlooked, and that's middle management.
Yep. Full stop.
Not a lot of training. And I always told this story. You got into middle management because you were one of the first few people in the department. You did your job really well. You knew the ins and outs of the job. As the company grew, they needed to expand your department. They hired someone else, and you had to train them.
Exactly.
And so now you have a team of 4 or 5, and you became their manager because you knew the job really well. Well, you might not have ever been given management skills. Do you know how to conflict resolution? Do you know how to have a difficult conversation? Can you have a performance review? Do you know how to motivate someone and not have it be money? Are you empathetic to people? Someone's dog died. Is it, well, you have to be here, or is there a little empathy? Oh my gosh,
Right.
that could be a member of the family for some people.
Right.
So you might learn a new skill, or might go to Excel class, or learn this on the computer, but no one talks about the softer skills, the people skills. And so I wrote this book on 12 ways to manage someone, to truly lead, not just manage. You're not responsible for their PTO, which is what it feels like as a middle manager.
Right.
Just where is everyone, and are they on time? That's not really your job. And so there are things that you can learn. We're kind of circling back to just making yourself better. Just 12 easy things about, and it's even sometimes about you. You might be blocking your team. One of the greatest lessons I learned.
I think oftentimes we are the ones blocking our teams. We need to get out of our own way. Yes.
I just wrote about this recently. My team years ago came to me and said, "You're our problem right now. You think that everything that leaves this company has to have your stamp on it, and you're slowing us down." Much appreciated, and they were 100% correct. I had to learn to give up some of that control. So all of that is, so that's the book. You can find it on Amazon. It's, and we'll talk about how to get a hold of me. But,
and we will also include the link in the show notes.
Fantastic.
If you haven't already sent it to me, you will go home
problem.
and send it to me.
No
This is your homework, Mark. You
Yep.
have homework. So speaking of books, though, one of the questions that we did have was, what's a book, podcast, or mentor who's made a huge impact in your leadership?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm a big podcast person. So recently I stumbled upon a podcast from David Duchovny. And if those of you that remember the X-Files, he's an actor, and he was in Californication, I believe, and some other things. He has a podcast called Failing Forward.
Oh, I love it.
Here's a incredibly smart person. He's went to Ivy League school, is a writer, has written a few books, but has had a lot of struggles in his life personally. And he talks about that, and he talks to people about failing. And he has all kinds of people, actors, employees, presidents of companies. It's really interesting to hear someone else's opinion or their own opinion of where they didn't succeed and what failure was. And quite frankly, how it changed them and what it did for them. So I love that podcast right now. I'm kind of into that. You mentioned Simon Sinek. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek, and so I listen to his stuff a lot. I do try to listen to, my wife and I are into murder mysteries, so we listen to it, but that didn't help my career any.
Well, let's hope not.
There's Richard Branson. I'm a virgin, and I kind of follow him. He's a risk taker. He's not braggadocious. There's things about him that I admire, and so there's I would say that's one that I follow and I'm interested in. So yeah,
I love it. Okay, so speaking of success and failures, if you were to sit here and you could only pick one or two pivotal moments in your life that really changed your trajectory towards success, what would you say they were?
Number one, I always tell the story, 100%. This was it. I was working for a company maybe a year in, I was 29 or 30 at the time. I'm sitting with my peer group. Doesn't matter our titles, but we were all the same title. We were in a room and we were brainstorming with our boss.
Mm-hmm.
And someone said something and someone said something else. And I looked at him and I said, that's just a stupid idea. That won't work. Like, that is not going to work. 35 minutes later, meeting's over. My boss says, do you mind sitting back for a minute? And I said, nope. And she said, everyone left the room. And she said, I love the fact that you have opinions. And most of the time you're right. And she said, but boy, you have really horrible delivery.
Mm-hmm.
She said, people listen to you and your opinions matter. But she said, boy, you really don't know sometimes how to deliver. And she said, let me give you an example. And she used the example of me saying that was a really dumb idea. She said, well, first of all, so-and-so spoke up and gave an idea. So the fact that he gave an idea isn't a bad thing. That's a positive.
Exactly.
You want that. And she said, although you're right, you could have said something like, wow, I understand why you would think this, but maybe we should try that.
Right.
Or, hey, I understand that, or I get that, but this is why I think we might struggle with that. She said, it's not what you're saying. You're probably not wrong. It might not have been the greatest idea, but it was an idea nonetheless. And boy, you made him feel bad in front of his peers.
And because to him, all he heard was, you think I'm dumb.
Yep. And so that is, I will tell you that I think about that interaction that I had with her 4 or 5 times a week, every single week. It literally changed the way I thought about how I was, how I spoke. Oftentimes I will literally stop myself and say to myself, what's the best way to say this? It was by far the best professional and personal advice anyone ever gave me. And I applaud her over and over and over for taking the time to stop me.
Yeah, to say
great.
something.
And
So
I was
once
embarrassed.
again, that was a conflict moment that you're grateful that
100% grateful. Conflict, criticism, constructive criticism,
communication,
everything. In that one lesson, it literally has saved me probably in thousands of conversations.
And I think that the reality is that I am one of those people. One of the things that I love about Simon's podcast is a bit of optimism, is that I fall into that category that I truly believe that humans for the most part are good and want to do good.
Yep.
And I also believe that when these type of events happen, there are often many different reasons. Like the individual may be struggling with something at home, or
sure.
they have all these things because they're humans. That's why I'm so passionate about seeing humans as humans.
Yep.
And then also I think that many times individuals just aren't aware of how they come across.
100%.
And if they don't have someone who can, in a compassionate way, sit them down and say, hey, I want to see you succeed.
Yep.
And this is something that's really going to hold you back. Let's role play a couple of different ideas on how not only could you have answered better, right?
Yeah.
But how you really could have then gained a collaborator. You could have gained
100%.
trust, all of these things.
100%. This is reminding me, I have a 19-year-old son, and he recently got his first waitering job, like at a restaurant. And he said, Dad, any words of advice? And I said, well, you really
That's cool that your 19-year-old son asked you for words of advice. Just throwing that out.
And he said, yeah, I'm serious. And I said, well, give up the cussing. You cuss a little too much. And it's a reflection of who you are. And I said, number one, you're going to be working with service people, and you're going to be helping people and assisting people. I said, so it doesn't sound nice. You may offend someone, and it isn't good for you, like your brand, right? It's just
right.
not something that you. I said, you can do that with me, like, all right, at home. And he really appreciated it. Like, he actually said to me, I do need to think about that. I don't want to give off a bad impression, especially serving people. So, like that, it literally reminded me of that. And he took it in the manner in which I gave it was, hey, I cuss on occasion. It's not a bad thing, but it's something you have to be aware of. And so that's one of those situations where I hope that worked for him.
Yeah. I think that's super fascinating. So one of the things that I noticed moving, and I've pivoted a lot in my career in different industries as I've moved on. And when I went into software development, that is when I really picked up cussing a lot, because you have all these developers next to you, right? And they're doing all this code, and then you hear all these words.
Expletives. Yes.
Exactly, right. I remember it was so funny because it was really when my daughter's 22, and it was when she was going through middle school and high school. And then she told me in middle school that she was not going to say her first cuss word until she's like 32, I think. And I was like, A, that's great. B, why did you pick that age? You know, like,
where'd that come from?
Exactly. And then the other thing is, people then would say a cuss word in front of her, and they would apologize, and she's like, no, that's okay. If you heard my mom, I hear it. And so for a while, I didn't really care about that, right? And then maybe about a year ago or so, I also am big into brand and stuff. And I was just like, you know what? I just got into this habit because it was the environment that I was in.
Yep.
So once again, a reminder as leaders, if you want to grow as leaders, surround yourself by other amazing leaders so that you can absorb that. So it was this environment that I was in, and I picked up these things, and I just never got rid of them. They're doing me no service at all. Now, do I occasionally say a few words that are not awesome? But it is very rare now at this phase. So if someone knew me 8 years ago versus now, they would be shocked. They would, say, okay, you're not, and it doesn't upset me if someone else says things, but I do pay more attention.
Yeah, I think people pay attention. So back to so that conversation that my boss had was probably one of the big ones. The other thing that happened in my career early on, someone told me about being visible, and they said, volunteer for anything. Like if they're looking for someone to do something, you be that person. Make sure that everyone knows you're the person, right? Be the subject matter expert or in something. Be the person that people go to for something. Be as visible, especially if you work in a big company.
Yes.
If you work in a big company and you have aspirations for doing more, whatever that means, either more responsibility, you move to another department, become a leader, make sure people know who you are. Be visible. Be the first person to volunteer. Be the person that gets in early, that stays late, that's dependable. Again, back to the brand. What do you want to do, and get yourself positioned for the right place at the right time. And visibility is one of those things.
Okay, so how do you advise and consult people on how to balance this visibility and the way that you've outlined it with boundaries, and also not being the person that is then once called for everything? And so I don't believe there's such thing as work-life balance. I believe we go in phases.
Yep.
But that you also lose yourself in the process, or you lose opportunity, like those types of things. How do you balance those two?
Some of it, for those people that are charting their path, there are people that literally chart their path. I want to become a manager. I want to become a division leader. I'd love to be a president. That's a different motivation. And for those people, you have to work hard at that.
Yes.
It isn't one of those things where you're the first one you're the last one in the morning and the first one out. Those things, you do have to invest in your career, which means reading the periodicals, asking questions, asking someone higher up than you to be a mentor. Those things do take time. There's always time for yourself. I think we make time for the things that are important to us.
Absolutely.
So if you told me that, I want to be the subject matter expert, take a book home and read. You'll find a half hour somewhere. You can balance the rest. But I would also say that part of your brand, you don't want it to be the person that works 90 hours a week, right, that isn't putting in, because that's, especially as a leader, I've seen that can be as much of a detriment in an employee as the other. Being aware that there are other people that need to volunteer. You do need to work with other people. So it's a conscious effort of, am I bogarting everyone's time? Am I the one speaking too much? I think most people feel that. I think you can feel that. What I mean by being visible is take credit for things that you did really well. Mm-hmm. Yep, I was on that team. These were some of the obstacles, and we overcame them. Come up with ideas, even when you think you're wrong, right? Be the first person to say, well, what about this? You don't have to do that. You don't have to be the person that always talks, but right. I think it's important for people to be visible. And being visible also could mean that you're relying on other people, and you're making people aware of that.
Aware of that, yeah.
I didn't know this. I went and sat with Kathy, and Kathy explained this to me, and I'm really appreciative of Kathy taking the time, because now you guys are coming to me, and I actually got it all from Kathy.
Right.
Right? Like that little bit of acknowledgement to someone else, even though they're still coming to you because you learned it, that's a conscious effort to be the person that you want to be at work, I think.
Well, once again, you're now showcasing that you're a phenomenal collaborator.
Yep.
And people want to work with you. And I think that's part of the visibility part, right?
Yep.
Is you want to showcase your work ethic, that you can learn new things, that you have a get after it attitude, that you can work well with others, that you can lift others up, but that you're also going to take credit for the things you did really well.
Yeah, and take the time. I'm in a situation. So the company that I run, we were purchased by a bigger company, and we've been purchased by them now for about 3 years. And positively, they're not in my business very much at all. I think it's because we're running really well and we have some good results. But if I want time with my boss, I have to set that time.
Yes.
So I actually make a concerted effort every year to have, in fact, 2 days from now, I'm flying to go see him, because I want to make sure I'm being in front of him, right? So it's a concert. I could go for probably another year without anyone calling me. I want to make sure that I'm being visible, that I'm delivering the message on the company that I want delivered. That's a conscious effort for me to be visible with him. He isn't in the same state. We don't see each other quite often. And the company that owns us owns lots of companies. So unless I'm speaking up and letting them know who we are and what we're doing, I could get lost in the shuffle. So that's a conscious effort. Now, am I doing it every week? No.
Right.
I'm not that person. I'm not sending him emails all the time, but I'm making sure that he understands what we've done. I have to brag a little bit about where we are, what we've done, what we're working on, that I want to be a part of something else, right? So that's a conscious effort to be visible. And I think that takes time and practice.
Absolutely. One of the things I was thinking of is that I see that skill appear to come more naturally from the individuals on sales teams who are kind of raised up through the sales ranks, because you're kind of taught that along the way, right?
Yep.
They need to see you and think of you with the brand, with the product, and buying it for us, right? And at the same time, we have plenty of people in our organization who are not fulfilling those roles, but they're fulfilling other roles. And the value of being visible, being active. And also, I think maybe there's a hidden twist in there, in that by being visible, you want to understand more. You want to learn more. You want to be more engaged. Because it's more than just booking a plane ticket and showing up somewhere. You're going to do more to prepare ahead of time and afterwards than just that, which is so key.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'll give one of my chapters away. It's the best 3 sentences of my career that I learned early on. Before you do anything, go to a meeting, go to a client visit, anything, ask yourself 3 questions. Why am I doing it? So if you're making a trip, why am I going?
Yep.
Why are we having this meeting? Why am I doing this? The second thing is, what am I going to do while I'm there? And the final question, most important, what's my expectation when it's done? And if you ask yourself those 3 questions before you travel to a customer, before you book a meeting with your team, before you have a lunch with someone, if you ask yourself, why am I going? What am I going to be doing there? And what is my expectation when I leave? It will further your career, make your time management much better. You'll not do things because of those 3 questions. It's one of the greatest lessons I learned, back to lessons learned. Ask yourself 3 questions, and you'll be amazed at how much more productive you will become, even personally. Oh, I was going to go take a ride and do this. I can do that later.
Right.
Like it's.
I love it.
So 3 questions. There you go. Free little chapter of the book.
Yeah, and then you can go in the show notes and get the link and go and buy the book.
Yes.
For that 3rd question, my favorite thing to say, and everyone I've worked with who listens to this podcast is going to die laughing right now, because I'm going to pause. Okay, you guys can all say it in your head. Okay. I always say, what does success look like?
Yep.
And that is in a meeting and everything, and it's just like, let's go ahead and say, what does success look like, so we can confirm we're moving in the trajectory towards success. We're on the same page.
Yep.
And at the end of the time, we also are like, yay, we did it. Or we're not quite there yet, and now this is our follow-up, or these are our action steps.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So
yep, love it.
So is there anything, Mark, you really hoped we would cover that we haven't covered? I mean, there's so much to talk about.
No, I mean, you asked me from the get-go. I'll just go full circle. Why do
Yeah.
I think I'm a badass leader? I will sum it up by saying because I think of all the things we talked about. Because everything that we talked about at some point in time goes through a leader's mind, or action, or you have to be conscious of. And the more of these things that we talked about you can think of and act on and appreciate, the better leader you are. And so, no, it flowed really nicely. And so, no, there wasn't anything that I have left out or that I thought was missing.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so how can people find you? We will include in the show notes, but go ahead and tell them if they're listening.
markwwilliams.com, that's my website. And so the book, you can find the book there. You can find a little bit of information on me. I do some speaking, so you can inquire that way. I'm on LinkedIn, so Mark Williams, Brokers International on LinkedIn. And those are probably the two places that I'd give. And then Brokers International, so we are BILTD.com.
Love it. Love it. Okay, now is my favorite time. It is share your favorite motivational quote. So what do you have for us, Mark?
Yeah, short and sweet. If you're not making mistakes, you're not working.
I love it. Definitely ties back to the failing forward or growing forward, or that mindset that, like, if you're not making a mistake, what are you doing? I cannot remember who it was. I mean, this is going to be terrible if it was Thomas Edison or Albert Einstein, but like someone of that caliber, somebody can tell me whatever, their building burned down and they looked at it and their famous quote was, well, now all of our mistakes have been burned up.
It's true.
I love that.
Yeah, if you're not working, it's the old, the old Babe Ruth. He had the most home runs. He also had the most strikeouts.
Yeah.
If you're afraid to make a mistake, then you have to tell your boss you weren't working, because no one's perfect. And so I expect mistakes. I just don't expect the same ones over and over.
Yep.
Right. And I think you build a culture of people wanting to try stuff. I think that's good. So that's my quote.
Yeah. I bought for one of my employees once she would overanalyze things to the point where I'm just like, okay, come on.
Analysis to paralysis.
Yes, exactly. And she was afraid of making mistakes. And so I gave her I bought these socks that said something like, it was a rocket ship on the socks, and it says something. I have a picture of it somewhere. On my way to my next big mistake or something like that. And so the following week, I don't know, she made a mistake on something. I don't know what it was. And I got this Post-it on my desk on top of the mistake. And she's like, okay, you asked for it. Here it is. I still have that Post-it, by the way. It's down in my exercise room. And I have it with some others that team members have given to me, because it just brings me joy to see that.
Yeah,
so
that's
anyways.
fantastic. Well, good for you.
Well, Mark, thank you for bringing the badass for sure into this podcast. I'm really grateful.
Oh, thanks for having me. This was fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining me for today's episode of the Badass Leaders Podcast. To hear more interviews with industry experts and learn how to grow your career and leadership potential, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to ensure you do not miss future episodes. This podcast is a production of the AGN Group. To learn more about the AGN Group, visit our website at theagnGroup.com. There, you can discover more about our services, which include hosting workshops, management consulting, brand strategy, keynote speaking, and more. Follow us on all social media channels shown on the screen and displayed in the show notes. And until next week, be brave and be badass.